Nettie kept no cookbook, not one, not ever, and I looked after she was gone. What she had was in her hands, and in 40 years of standing at the same stove, and when she passed in 1994, the most of it went with her. What I've got is what I saw from a kitchen chair, from the time I was big enough to be told to sit in it and stay put. Here's the twist. Number 21 is how she knew what her oven was doing without a dial on it anywhere, and she was never wrong about it that I saw. Number 9 is the one thing she did that the food people have since gone and proved was a mistake, and I'll say so plain. And number 1 isn't a trick at all. It's the whole thing underneath every other one on this list. Let's count down 25 mountain kitchen tricks Nettie never wrote down. Number 25. Sift the flour. Every time, no exceptions. Nettie had a tin sifter with a crank handle worn smooth on one side, and no flour went into a bowl in that kitchen without going through it first. I thought it was fussiness for years. It isn't. Flour packs down hard in a sack, and a cup dipped out of a packed sack weighs half again what a cup of sifted flour weighs. You put that much extra in a cake, and you get a dry, tight, heavy thing, and you'll never know why. Sifting breaks it back up and puts air in it, so a cup measures like a cup ought to. There was a second reason, too, and it's the one nobody thinks about now. Flour kept in a sack in a mountain pantry got bugs in it. The sifter caught them. She'd shake it out and look before she went on. If your flour has sat 6 months, sift it and look at what stays in the screen. Number 24. Cut the biscuits straight down. Never twist the cutter. I watched her cut out a pan of biscuits 10,000 times, and her wrist never turned once. Straight down, straight up, move over, straight down again. And there's a reason that runs deeper than habit. A biscuit rises because the layers of dough and cold fat push apart in the heat. Twist that cutter as it goes through, and you smear the cut edge closed. Seal those layers to each other right where they most need to come apart. The biscuit still rises, some, but it rises crooked and short, and it leans straight down, and the edges stay open, and it climbs even all the way around. If your biscuits come out lopsided and you can't figure why, it isn't your recipe, it's your wrist. And the same goes for a donut, a dumpling, anything you cut out of a soft dough. Number 23. Scald the milk before it ever touches the batter. This one I'd have told you was pure superstition, and I'd have been wrong. Nettie heated her milk in a small pan until it just quivered at the edges, then let it cool back down before it went into a yeast dough. Every time. Never boiled it, just brought it up. Now, here's what the bakers have worked out since. Raw milk carries a protein in it that gets in the way of the gluten, keeps the dough from building the structure it needs, and you end up with a loaf that's slumped and dense. Heat kills that protein off. So a scalded milk bread comes up higher and holds a softer crumb than the same bread made with milk straight out of the jug. 2 things to watch. Don't boil it, and don't put it in hot, or you'll kill the yeast and then you've got no bread at all. Warm to the wrist, that's all. Number 22. The broom straw. There was no cake tester in that kitchen and no toothpicks either. She'd walk over to the broom in the corner, break off a straw, and run it down into the middle of the cake. Comes out with wet batter on it, the cake wants longer. Comes out clean or with a crumb or 2 clinging dry, it's done. That was the whole instrument. And it works better than a toothpick does, honestly, because it's thinner and it doesn't leave a hole you can see in the top of the cake. Now, I'll say the obvious thing so nobody writes me. Use a clean straw off a clean broom, or a piece of dry spaghetti, which is what I use, and which does the identical job. The point isn't the broom. The point is she never once owned a tool she couldn't replace out of the corner of her own kitchen for free. Number 21. Reading the oven with her hand. Here's the one from the top. That wood cook stove had no thermometer, no dial, no numbers anywhere on it, and Nettie baked bread, pies, cakes, and cornbread in it, and I never in my life saw her burn a thing. She'd open the door and hold the back of her hand inside for a count. Couldn't hold it past 2 or 3. That was hot, and that was bread and biscuits. Held it to 5 or 6. That was medium, and that was your cake. Held it past 10 and it was cooling down and fit for meringue and for drying. There was a second test with a pinch of flour on a pan, and how fast it browned told the same story. She'd learned it off her own mother, and it took her years, and it is the single most impressive thing I ever watched a person do in a kitchen. She was reading temperature with the skin on her hand. Number 20. That stove had geography, and she knew every foot of it. A wood range doesn't heat even, and it isn't supposed to. The eye over the firebox runs hot enough to fry. The far side is a good deal cooler. There's a warming shelf up top that sits at about the heat of a summer day, and there's a spot at the back of the range top that's warm and no more than warm. She used every one of them differently, all at once. And it's the closest thing to a modern range with 4 burners on different settings that anybody had in 1940. Beans went to the back to sit all day. The skillet went over the fire. Bread rose on the warming shelf. Butter softened on the cool corner. Every electric stove built since has been trying to give you what she had by moving a pan 8 inches. If you cook on a wood stove now, quit fighting the uneven heat. That's not the flaw in it. That's the feature. Number 19. Turn the pan halfway through. Always. Straight on from the last one. Because that oven ran hotter at the back than it did at the front, anything that sat still in it came out browner on one end. So halfway through the bake, she'd open the door quick and spin the pan around and shut it. That's it. And here's the thing worth knowing, which is that your modern oven does the same thing. Every one of them has a hot side. They just hide it from you because you can't feel it through the glass. Bake a sheet of biscuits sometime and don't turn them. Then look at the 2 ends of the pan. There's your answer. She did it out of necessity on a stove that made no promises. Do it now on a stove that makes a lot of them, and your baking gets better, and it cost you 1.5 seconds. Number 18. Flour the fruit or it all sinks. Any cake with raisins, dried apples, blackberries, nuts, anything in it. She'd put those in a bowl first and toss them with a spoon of the flour out of the recipe before they ever went into the batter. Skip it, and every last raisin ends up in a layer along the bottom of the pan. What's happening is simple enough. The batter's thin and loose when it goes in the oven, and heavier bits sink through it before it sets up. That little dusting of dry flour grabs onto the wet surface of the fruit and gives the batter something to hold on to, and it thickens the batter right around each piece besides. So it hangs where you put it. Use flour from what the recipe already calls for, not extra, or you'll dry the cake out. And toss it dry. Wet fruit and flour makes paste, and paste sinks the same as fruit does. Number 17. Buttermilk soak. For chicken and for anything wild. Nettie put chicken in buttermilk the night before she fried it, in a crock, in the cool part of the pantry. Squirrel, rabbit, an old hen, anything with a strong taste on it or a tough muscle, got the same treatment and got it longer. 2 things are going on. Buttermilk's acid, mildly so, and mild acid works slow on the proteins in meat and loosens them up. and you get a tender bite where you had a tough one. It's gentle enough that it won't turn the meat to mush the way a hard vinegar soak will if you leave it. And the second thing is the flour sticks. Meat pulled out of buttermilk is tacky, and the seasoned flour grabs it and stays grabbed all the way through the grease. Skip the soak and half your crust ends up in the skillet. That's the whole secret of fried chicken that keeps its coat. Number 16. Clabber, and how she made it when there wasn't any. Buttermilk in that house wasn't the buttermilk in the carton now. It was what was left after churning, or it was clabber, which is raw milk left in a warm place until it soured and thickened and turned. It smelled sharp and it tasted sharper and it went into everything. But here's the part I want you to have, because it's the useful part. When she was out, she made it. A spoonful of vinegar or a squeeze of lemon into a cup of sweet milk, stir it once, let it stand until it thickens and curdles a little, and it works. In biscuits, in cornbread, in a cake, you cannot tell the difference. That's not a modern shortcut somebody invented either. Women were doing that 100 years back, because a cow goes dry and a recipe doesn't care. Number 15. Don't grease the pan for a tall cake. This one runs backwards against everything you've been told, and it's right. For most things, you grease the pan. For a tall cake that gets its lift out of beaten egg whites, an angel food, a sponge, a jelly roll sheet, you leave that pan bare and dry, and Nettie was firm about it. Here's why. That batter climbs. It's got no baking powder doing the work, just air whipped into whites, and the way it gets tall is by gripping the sides of the pan and hauling itself up as it sets. Grease the pan and it can't get hold of anything, and it slides right back down on itself and bakes into a short, dense disc. Bare pan and it climbs. You cool it upside down for the same reason. Wash that pan clean too. Grease left in the pan from the last time is enough to ruin it. Number 14. Butter the rim of the pot. A pot of beans, a pot of milk, a pot of potatoes, anything with starch in it, will foam up and go over the side and onto the stove in about 4 seconds when your back's turned. Nettie ran a bit of butter or a smear of grease around the inside rim of the pot, up above the water line, and it stopped. And it does stop. The foam is bubbles held together by the starch that cooks out into the water, and fat breaks the surface of a bubble and pops it. So the foam climbs, hits the greased ring, and dies right there. Same trick. Drop a spoon of grease straight into the water. It'll knock the boil over down. There's a wooden spoon laid across the pot that people swear by too, and I'll be honest, that one works some, but not near as well as the butter does, and it depends on the pot. Number 13. Salt never soap on the skillet. That black iron skillet came to her from her own mother, and it never in its life saw a bar of soap. What it got was a handful of coarse salt and a stiff brush or a rag, scoured out hot, then wiped dry and set back on the stove to steam itself off. The salt works like grit and gets the stuck bits up without cutting into the black. Now I'll give you the honest modern version of this, because the old rule went a step too far. The old soaps were harsh with lye in 'em, and they genuinely would strip a pan. The dish soap now is nothing like that, and a little of it on a well-seasoned skillet won't hurt a thing. What actually kills a skillet is water left standing in it. So if you take one thing, take this. Dry it on the stove. Every single time. Number 12. Green apples for the pectin. When Nettie made blackberry jelly or grape or anything from a fruit that runs loose and won't firm up, she'd throw in a few hard green apples or a handful of crab apples off the tree by the barn. No pectin box ever came into that kitchen. And it works because pectin is a real thing that's in the fruit itself, and underripe fruit is loaded with it, and it drops off fast as the fruit ripens. So a green apple is a jar of store pectin that grew on a tree. Cook it in with the fruit, strain it out with the pulp, and your jelly sets. 2 rules she kept. Not too many or the jelly goes stiff and rubbery and loses the taste of the berry. And they have to be genuinely green and hard. A ripe apple gives you almost nothing and you'll have wasted the trip. Number 11. The cold saucer. So how did she know the jelly was ready with no thermometer anywhere on the place? A saucer, sitting in the coldest spot she had. She'd spoon a little of the boiling jelly onto that cold saucer, let it sit half a minute, then push it with her finger. If it wrinkled up and held the track of her finger, it was done and off the fire that second. If it ran back flat and thin, it wanted longer, and she'd go on and test again in a few minutes. There's a second version off the spoon itself, where you lift it and watch how it comes off the edge. Runs off in drops, not ready. Comes off in a sheet, 2 drops joining into one. That's ready. Both of these are real, both work, and both beat guessing. And overcooked jelly can't be fixed. That's why you test and test again. Number 10. Skim the foam, and don't you dare stir it back in. Any jelly, any preserve, any pot of beans, there's a gray-white foam that comes up on top, and it went off into a saucer and never back into the pot. That's not waste, and it isn't fussiness. In jelly, that scum is air and bits of fruit protein, and if you stir it back in, your jelly sets up cloudy instead of clear, and it can leave a fine bitter edge on it. Skim it off at the end right before you jar it up, and the jelly goes into the glass bright enough to read through. Same on the top of a bean pot, same on a stock. And Nettie's grandchildren ate the jelly foam off the saucer while it was still warm, which is the best thing on this entire list, and the only one I can't give you a good reason for. Number 9, here's the one she had wrong. Nettie put a pinch of baking soda in the pot when she cooked dried beans, and her mother had, and it was the common practice all through these mountains. There's a real reason under it. Our water here is hard, and hard water fights against beans softening, and soda makes the water alkaline and breaks down the pectin in the skins so the beans give up quicker. That much is true. Here's the part she didn't know, and I have to say it. That same alkaline water destroys thiamine, one of the B vitamins, right out of the beans, and it does it thoroughly. And go a hair heavy on the soda and you get slick, mushy beans with a soapy taste that nobody wants. So she was solving a real problem with a tool that cost her more than she knew. If your water's hard, a small pinch is defensible. But she'd have been better off just soaking them longer, and I'd rather tell you that than let it stand. Number 8. Nutmeg in the milk gravy. A grate of nutmeg went into every white gravy, every cream sauce, every dish of scalloped potatoes she ever made, and you cannot taste it. That's the whole point. Nutmeg in that quantity doesn't announce itself. It works on the milk underneath, cuts the flat dairy heaviness that makes a cream sauce taste like nothing but fat and flour. Take it out and the gravy tastes dull, and you won't be able to say what's missing. Put it in, and everything else in the pan comes up sharper. It's the same job salt does, done from a different direction, and it has to be grated fresh off the whole nutmeg. The pre-ground stuff loses its oils on the shelf inside of a year and gives you dust. She kept a whole one in a jar with a little tin grater, and it lasted for years, because the amount you want is about 8 scrapes. Number 7. A splash of vinegar in the water for boiling eggs, and what it's actually doing. She put a good splash of vinegar in the pot when eggs went in to boil, And here I've got to split this one down the middle, because half of the old reasoning holds and half doesn't. What it genuinely does. If an egg cracks in the pot, and one always does, the acid sets that leaking white almost the instant it hits the water, so it seals the crack instead of streaming out into a mess of white rags. That part is real, and I do it. What it doesn't do, near as I can find out, is make the egg peel easier, and that's what most people put it in for now. There's no good evidence behind that. What actually makes an egg peel is how old it is. So use the vinegar for the crack, and use an older egg for the peeling, and don't expect one to do the other one's job. Number 6. The apple slice in the cake tin. Nettie kept cake in a tin with a lid, and in the tin with it went one slice of raw apple, laid on a bit of waxed paper so it wasn't touching the cake. It kept the cake from going dry and stale for days longer than it had any business staying good. And the reason is that an apple is mostly water, and it gives that water off slowly into the closed air of the tin. And the cake, which is sitting there trying to dry out, doesn't dry out because the air around it isn't dry. Same trick works with a slice of bread in with hard cookies, which softens them, and it works with brown sugar gone to a brick. 2 things. Change that apple slice every couple of days or you'll have mold, which is worse than a dry cake, and the tin has to actually shut. In an open dish, it does nothing at all. Number 5. Black pepper on the ham. The country hams hung in the smokehouse from November clean through into summer, and around March, when the weather turned and the flies woke up, they got coated heavy with coarse black pepper, sometimes with a little more salt worked in. It looked strange, and it wasn't for flavor. Flies lay eggs on curing meat, and those eggs hatch into what the old men here called skippers, and skippers will ruin a ham that's already had 8 months of work put into it. Flies won't land on that pepper. It's a barrier and an irritant both, and it costs a nickel. They'd bag the ham in cloth over top of it, and when the ham finally came down, you'd brush and wash the pepper crust off and cut into meat that was clean the whole way through. That's a whole winter's meat saved by a shaker of pepper. Number 4. Sassafras tea in the spring, and why I can't tell you to drink it. Come the first warm days, somebody went and dug sassafras roots, and the bark off them got boiled into a red tea, and everybody in the house drank it. It was said to thin your blood after winter. Now I have to be straight with you the way this channel does. Sassafras root bark contains safrole, and safrole was found to cause cancer in animal studies, and the FDA banned it as a food additive back in 1960. It has been off the shelf my whole adult life. What's sold now as sassafras tea has had the safrole taken out, and that's the one to buy if you want the taste, and the taste is genuinely good and worth having. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you to go dig a root and boil it, because I'd be telling you to do something the evidence says not to do. Know this one as history. Buy the safrole-free kind. Number 3. The apple butter stir that never stops. This was an all-day job outdoors in the fall. A copper kettle over a fire, cider and apples cooking down for 8 hours or better. And one person stood at it the entire time with a long wooden paddle and never let it be still, and they traded off every so often, and it was the closest thing to a party this family had. The stirring isn't for show. Apple butter is thick and full of sugar, and sugar scorches on a hot copper bottom in seconds. And one scorch flavors the whole kettle and you cannot get it back out. So the paddle has to keep the bottom moving. Wooden paddle, never metal, because metal reacts with the fruit acid and puts a taste in it. And the copper heats even. which is the reason for the kettle. You'll know it's done when the paddle leaves a track behind it that doesn't close back up. Number 2. Apples drying on the tin roof. Come September, Nettie and whoever she could catch would peel and core and slice apples all day, and those slices went onto clean cloth spread over the tin roof of the shed, in full sun, covered with cheesecloth against the flies, brought in at dusk so the dew didn't get to them, back out in the morning. 3 days of good weather and they were leathery and dry and they'd keep in a sack all winter. The tin is the trick. It takes the sun and holds it and throws heat up into the fruit from underneath. So you're drying from both sides at once and it goes a great deal faster than on a table. Fast matters because slow drying is how you get mold. And those dried apples were what fried pies and stacked cake and apple butter got made from clear through until spring, when the fresh ones were long gone. Number 1. She knew what stood in for what. Here's the one Nettie would have laughed at me for calling a trick. She carried a whole table of substitutions in her head, and it was the most valuable thing in that kitchen by a wide margin. Out of buttermilk, vinegar, and sweet milk. Out of sugar, molasses, and she knew to cut the liquid back. Out of eggs, and in the Depression she was out of eggs plenty. A spoon of vinegar and a pinch of soda would raise a cake without 'em. Out of milk, water, and a spoon of grease. Out of baking powder, cream of tartar, and soda mixed 2 to 1. She never had all the ingredients. Not once in her life did she open that pantry and find everything a receipt called for. And that's the thing a recipe can't hold. A recipe is a list that assumes you have the list. She cooked from the other end of it entirely, from what was actually on the shelf in front of her that day, and she got where she was going anyway, every time, for 40 years. That's the real inheritance, and it's the part that dies. Anybody can hand you a receipt for a stack cake. What she had was the knowing that let her make one in a year the hens quit laying, and there's no writing that down in a way that holds. Here's my challenge. Pick one off this list and go do it this week. Sift your flour and see what falls out. Cut your biscuits without turning your wrist and look at how they come up. Or put a green apple in with your next batch of blackberry jelly and throw the pectin box away. Then tell me in the comments, and I want the specific thing. What did your grandmother do in her kitchen that she never wrote down anywhere? That you only know because you stood there and watched her? What was her name and what county did she cook in? I'm trying to get some of it down while there's still somebody left to ask, because that's the entire reason for this. She never wrote it down. I just did.